If you are an Xbox devotee, I am so excited for you because we just learned that you can finally play Kena Bridge of Spirits. And this is, in my mind, one of the most undervalued games that I have ever had the pleasure of beating over the past 5 years. It is an absolutely incredible game. It is underrated because I think this is a 9 out of 10 game. Got a lot of 7, 8 out of 10s back when it came out. And it's like nothing you've ever played before. So I need to take this video and show you why it's so unique and different and why you need to play it. I mean, first of all, just look at this jaw-dropping animation. I mean, look at this. So Ember Lab, this is their first game that they've ever made, okay? And it was founded by brothers Mike and Josh Greer, and they started as an animation studio. That's what's so interesting. An animation and digital content studio, and they had a bunch of clients, but here, what I think cannot be understated is just how freaking talented these guys are. And I did a bunch of digging on Ember Lab leading up to this video. I wanted to see what they were about beyond just Kena. So I went and I found some really interesting stuff about them. So before they went and did all this client work, they were working on this short film called Dust. And that's cool. You can check it out on YouTube. But they also went viral for this video about Majora's Mask. You know, as they say, a tribute to the legendary game. The short showcases Skull Kid's dark origin story, our take on how the Zelda universe could be realized in film. And they made this original animation that is insane quality, and it went viral. As you can see, it was 7 years ago, and it got 14 million views. It's hard to say how much this played in their success, why they got funding for a game or whatever maybe it was. I mean, it's just a few animators, really, that are working on this animation team. But this is what they did. And I mean, just the quality of this, it's just so funny. Like when you go and you look down at the comments, is it just me or does this animation look strangely better than your average theater movie? It's like, yeah, like this is like better than Pixar level. Like, look at this stuff. How do you do that? I mean, it just absolutely blows me away. Blows me away. So anyway, I'll let you watch that on your own time. It is incredible, which brings me back to Kena. So then they started working on Kena. They love telling stories. They decided to make a game. I don't know why they decided to make a game, but they did. And they brought in that animation know-how that they have to this game, Kena Bridge of Spirits. Just look at how beautiful this is. If you've ever wanted to play inside a real Pixar movie, this is it. But there's a twist. There is quite a twist. Because I gotta tell you something, this game is hard. So what is it? What is this game? This game definitely did not get enough recognition when it came out, and because it wasn't played by a bunch of big YouTubers. It's a Souls-like. Yes, this game right here was inspired by Dark Souls, heavily. But none of the big, like, Souls-like players were playing this a lot of the time. And I think it was pre-Elden Ring times, and it was a little bit different. Now when any game comes out that's a Souls-like, you see all the major, like, Souls people, like, banging it out and making videos about it. I didn't see that as much, and maybe it was overlooked because of the animation style, but make no mistake, this is a Souls-like. You essentially are playing inside a Pixar movie with Dark Souls combat and mechanics, and a little bit of Zelda exploration and puzzle solving inside there. The story to Kena is, you know, it's relatively simple. It's probably its weakest point. I mean, it's still a 9 out of 10 game, but if there's one weakish point, it's probably the story. Basically, angry spirits are taking over everything and you need to cleanse them. So you're going through and cleansing them. But it's a small story about a community. It's not about saving the world or anything grandiose. It's like there's this small community in this fictional place, this fantastical place, and here we are. I think the weakest thing, and some reviewers pointed this out at the beginning, is that you just don't get a lot into Kena's story, Kena. You don't get a lot into her story, like what makes her tick, like what's her backstory, what is she trying to achieve. And there's a little bit of that, but there's just not quite enough for you to be super emotionally invested in her. But that's okay, because there are a lot of other cool characters that you do get invested in along the way. But I really want to talk about the combat, because that's where, like, you don't expect that. I show you this Majora's Mask video, and then you see the animation from Bridge of Spirits, and you're like, okay, wow, this game is really all about the animation. Oh no, the combat is freaking fantastic. And it's some of the hardest, honestly, Souls-like combat that I've played in the past 5 years. I think this game in some ways is harder than Elden Ring. In some ways, especially the difficulty spikes towards the end, and if you're not on normal difficulty in particular, if you've played it, you know what I'm talking about. See, now we're about to get in a fight here. And it has a lot of the things that you would think. It has a parry mechanic, a shield mechanic, a dodge mechanic, strong and weak attacks on R1 and R2. You have a skill tree with special abilities, but you also have a bow and arrow, which is really interesting. And the experience of a typical combat encounter, you can see it here. I mean, you're stringing together these combos of R1 and R2 hits, just like any Souls-like, dodging with invincibility rolls, and parrying when you can, with like a relatively decent parry window. Nothing too crazy on the parry window. I think that's been patched, by the way, since I played the first time, because I recently started another playthrough, and it was a little bit easier. But this is a hard game. There's some intense difficulty spikes here. So you can see, as you're going through, you have folks with shields. There's a ton of enemy variety, actually. You have to break their shields, and then you can hold down R2 to do a powered attack. You can mix in some bow and arrows. It's really tough because you're often swarmed by a bunch of enemies. This is an early game fight right here. You've got a bunch of enemies going around, and what you're doing is picking up those yellow things on the ground are rot charges, and that blue thing right there on the ground was a healing flower. And the way that that works is you have these little buddies. These little buddies are called rot. You can see them on her shoulder. These little guys here are rot, and I don't know why they called them rot. I always thought that was kind of a strange thing. They're so cute and helpful. Why are they called rot? I don't know. I'm sure there's a lore reason that I just don't remember. But anyway, the rot are your little buddy friends, and you pick up a ton of them along the way, dozens really, and you find them, and then they help you do special abilities. So I mentioned that flower that happens during combat. You send the rot out to that flower if you have enough rot charges, and that will heal you. So you don't have like a flask or anything like that. They also give you special power-ups in battle, like a rot hammer and other things like that. So you have a limited amount of rot charges that you can use. And you see them down there in the lower left. You have 2 rot charges, and then she's filling up a third. You fill up your rot charges by attacking, you know, that kind of thing. It's just a lot of fun. There's a great lock-on mechanic. And honestly, it was probably... It was a bit of a critique from me at the beginning about how difficult this game was. Because to be honest with you, sometimes you feel like the waves of enemies are just relentless when you get towards the end game. But man, it's so worth it, and it really pays off. There are great boss fights, and you've got to imagine there are amazing animations leading into the boss fights. The other thing that we need to talk about is exploration. Exploration is a huge part of the game, because a lot of what you're doing is you're not just going from combat counter to combat encounter. It's a little more Zelda-like and slightly Dark Souls-like. You're sort of going around trying to find the next place to go with lots of nooks and crannies and side quests and other things going on that you can find. You have to collect more rot. They're not all just put in front of you. You're always looking for another new buddy to find. You're always looking for the in-game currencies to level up your skill tree and to buy new hats for your rot, which was never that interesting to me, but I'm not the cosmetic type. And then there's just like a ton of puzzles. So many puzzles. So you'll see right here, this is like the first puzzle of the game, and I totally forgot how to do it. I captured this when I was replaying it. Then I was like, oh, I think I gotta stand on this thing and then send out my pulse or whatever it is. So then I did that, and it unlocked an environmental puzzle so that I could get to the next little area to complete my objective. That is all throughout this. And the puzzles can get kind of challenging, honestly. There's a little bit of platforming in here, too. This is like basic, simple platforming you're seeing here. But the actual platforming can get challenging from time to time using your double jump and your sprint. But mostly when we're talking about environmental stuff and exploration, it's the puzzles. I mean, they are a little bit Zelda-like. It takes some thought. You have to really look at environmental cues around you and say to yourself, okay, like, what does the game want me to do here? Because it's not just going to tell you what to do. You're going to feel like, I don't know where to go. I've been to every little corner of the map, and I'm not sure where to go in the next area. Because it is kind of open world, but not really. It all connects to each other. You are forced to solve these environmental puzzles to get to the next space, and sometimes you might not know what to do. You have to shoot certain things with your arrow, pulse certain things. Sometimes you need to send a pulse out to certain trees with a certain amount of timing and then shoot a certain thing like within a certain time frame, and you're trying to figure out what position you need to stand in to be able to do it just as fast and as accurate as they want you to do it to be able to unlock the puzzle. I mean, this is a different game than I've played before. Inspired by many, but ultimately very, very unique. I mean, if you had told me that there was a game coming out that was essentially a Pixar movie, except we're gonna put Souls combat and Souls bonfire system inside this game, I would be like, really? That sounds awesome, and you're not really gonna make that, are you? but they did. And this game was very overlooked. As I said, it was pre-Elden Ring. Now, with it coming out on Xbox in August, it's already on PC. It's already debuted as a PlayStation exclusive. Now it's time for everybody to be able to play it. What do you think? Have you played Kena Bridge of Spirits? Has this been on your radar? Have you avoided it? Did you never get through it? I want to talk about it in the comments because this game really doesn't get enough chatter in general. So let's create some chatter about it. All right, I'll see you in the next video. And don't forget to have fun.